Hi guys, welcome to the channel. Thank you for joining me and thank you for your continued support. So you might remember a little video I did a while ago about Rachel Reeves wanting to have people in work staying in work, and so if they develop a long-term illness or develop a disability, she wants to try and make sure they stay in work rather than dropping out and therefore going on to benefits, because she says it then takes them a lot longer to get back into work if they ever get back into work at all. Now that video sparked some very good comments, as they always do, and I thank you for all the comments. One of them being, of course, that something that I hadn't touched on, but of course it's a very valid point, was that how many of these jobs are actually what caused the long-term illnesses or the long-term disability in the first place, and that is actually a very valid question, and this is something that I don't think they've actually looked at. But now apparently there is this survey which says that someone who has a disability or has a lifelong illness is more likely to drop out of work than someone who doesn't. Now I think that's a little bit obvious really, because if you've got someone who develops a long-term illness or even has a long-term illness at work, then there is the possibility that that illness may get to a point where they can't work anymore and therefore they drop out of the labour market. Same with disabilities. You know, some disabilities get worse as they get older, and so, you know, the longer they work, the longer perhaps they do a certain type of job, the more difficult it becomes, and then they have to drop out. You know, these people need to have better working relationships with their employer, so essentially what it called for was more flexible working for people who are disabled or have long-term illnesses. And I think that while that's a good idea, you know, obviously we need to have flexible working. I think flexible working is something that, you know, is fundamental in my opinion, not just for people with disability and long-term illnesses, but also for parents, you know, single parents and things like that. I think it's an important part of life, and now you know, it's different to how it was many years ago, where you worked 9 to 5, you know, or you did very rigid hours and you couldn't do anything different. Things have changed a lot since then. So I would say that yes, you know, flexible working could be a way to keep some long-term disabled or illness people in work for longer. However, I think that again they are missing the point here, and there's two fundamental points to this. Firstly is the fact that, as people have said in the comment section, if the job is the reason why they have this disability or this long-term illness, then making that work flexible may not make a difference. You know, it might not make any difference whatsoever if the damage is already done. Secondly, you've got to talk about the type of job that someone's doing. I mean, you know, if you're, you know, flexible working can go to a certain extent, but some jobs might not be suitable for flexible working. Other jobs might, but, you know, it depends on the job that you're doing. And if your job isn't suitable for flexible working, then how can your employer facilitate that? And thirdly, it's also about the employers themselves. Again, it's about the attractiveness of a certain candidate. If you have someone who can do, and I've said this before, if you have someone who can do all the hours, all the shifts, doesn't need flexible working, can do whatever they need to do, and you have someone who has who needs to have flexible working, can only work certain days or certain hours and things like this, it makes it more attractive to the employer to pick the person who can do more rather than the person that they may have to accommodate more for. And I know that sounds very discriminatory, but, you know, I think that does happen. It does happen in the workplace. So my opinion would be that while flexible working can work to a certain extent, I don't think it should be done in place of actually finding out why the person has this long-term disability or illness, and actually whether sometimes people just cannot go back to work. And I know they were talking about things like working from home, and I've had comments from people who have said, well, yeah, theoretically I could, but there are reasons why I can't, and they've listed the reasons why they can't. And so just because someone is at home and has to be at home doesn't mean that they can work from home, because there may be barriers for them to doing that. So I think it needs to be thought through a little bit more, and this may be the reason why the government have jumped on this bandwagon of trying to keep disabled people into work. But I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section on this. Do you feel that flexible working is already a thing for disabled people or those with long-term illnesses? Have you found that the employers you've worked for have been good in terms of flexible working, or do you think that actually it's just another barrier for disabled people and people with long-term illness to get into work, because they then have to employers then have to accommodate them. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section as always, and don't forget to subscribe.